40 acres is the place to be. The Freeman family is great at farming. 'Cause 14 years ago the animals died. And people said, what are we gonna do without our meats and sides? 12 years ago, Civil War broke out. Because the food, it was running the fuck out. 11 years ago, famine spread. And people said, we must protect our farmland. We'll communicate and help out when we all can. But when bad people come and try to steal, we must protect our way of life. 40 acres, we are there. 40 Acres was written and directed by R.T. Thorne, and it was written by Glenn Taylor and has story done by Laura Campbell, and takes place in a not too distant future, not next Sunday AD. No man named Joel, not too different from you or me. We have a family named the Freemans, that are a family of descendants of African Civil War veterans that are living on a plot of land in Canada that is exactly 40 acres. Down to the fucking nub, as Dennis Condrey would say. They didn't even want to go with 39.9 acres, not even 39.8, not even 39.999, and find it, not even 69 acres, because that would have been almost twice as much land. We have the Freemans, headed by the matriarch, Haley, played by Danielle Deadwyler, who is terrific, magnificent in this movie, as she is in pretty much any movie she's in. She gives it her goddamn all. I will say that as much praise right here. This is basically her, like in The Woman in the Yard, except she's actually given material to work with, unlike The Woman in the Yard. And she has a few family members, such as Manny, played by Katem O'Connor. Hope I got that right. He's a teenage son. We find out a little bit more about their story during some flashbacks. We get chapter breaks. We also have a stepdad, Michael Greyeyes, who is actually a pretty good character actor, and other kids. And it also turns out they're not alone. There's a collection of farms called The Network. There is a woman that, Haley communicates with, that she seems to have a past with, and seems like things are going well, except for the fact that bad people are trying to come through and steal the farmland, because farmland is the most important resource. That's about the most spoiler-free premise I can give. This actually was all told at the very beginning in scrolling, or not even scrolling text, but just text on the screen. And I knew next to nothing about this besides the description that I read, and also Danielle Deadwyler being in this, so I went into this completely blind. It was marketed as action. I will say there's a little bit of action in it, but a lot of it is like a mixture of action, family drama, a little bit of horror, and also a little bit of like the human condition, how people would react when they don't have certain resources and they're trying to do the best they can to just fucking survive. Even though it doesn't really seem like this world is all that fucked, it just seems like farm life in Canada. We just take the word for it because it is a low-budget effort, but that does not necessarily mean it's bad. You know why? Because overall, R.T. Thorne did a pretty good job with this. Some good cinematic shots. Made the most of the, the land that was used. And the fact that it was probably a modestly budgeted movie. And being the fact that it's only got released in like 4 theaters in my area, and specifically actually only one within driving distance of me, like 25 miles away, I decided to give it a shot. Now, I will say that really about the only issue that I have with this movie is a couple pacing issues. I think that this film could have done with a little bit of adding of the slow burn, cutting a few things out, and maybe, so we didn't jar so much with the third act. Because I get what they were trying to do. They were building some good story, but there were a few scenes that we could have cut down a bit to where maybe when we got to the eventual reveal, it's like, okay, that's it. Like, that's it. That's what we're doing. I mean, and yes, it is about the triumph of the human condition and Danielle Deadwyler doing Danielle Deadwyler things, which she does get to do at some points. Gets to have that stern, that 1,000-yard stare she has is fucking magnificent. She is great at that. And it's good for what it is. I mean, there's a good dynamic between her and the guy that plays Manny. There are some characters that are introduced, and I think, just to give a little bit of a backstory, and then there's not really much done with them. And again, pacing issues aside, I thought this movie was overall pretty decent. I actually thought it was pretty good at parts. I think that it had the potential to be great, but as far as something that got released in theaters, it's only going to be in theaters, I think, for about a week, at least in my area. It's worth checking out. And if you can, check it out on streaming, rent it, support independent filmmakers, filmmakers that are starting out. Because R.T. Thorne has just done television, stuff like that. And I believe, according to the IMDb's of the story by and the writer by, I don't think they have too many credits to their name. So everybody's got to start somewhere. And when you put Danielle Deadwyler with material that she actually can sink her teeth into and just, do what she does, you get a film like this that I can understand some people maybe not liking. I ended up enjoying it, and I would encourage you guys to check it out. So I'm going to get into spoilers. That's all I can say. 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So basically, yeah, the stuff I described in the beginning. Famine, pestilence, we get chapter breaks, we get the Freemans, we get some stuff like, we get Michael's character speaking his native language, and also doing some stuff with the farmland and everything. Even finds a bunker full of spices at one point. But this really is about the family and the balance and everything. There's this character, Danis, that's one of the younger daughters. And while Manny is doing a patrol that he doesn't tell anybody about, he sees a girl in a lake. Now, this is after he looks for some resources. And he sees Dawn, Milcania Diaz Royas. I hope I got that right. I'll say she does the best with her character, but isn't given a bunch to do. She is a central part of a certain plot point. And also, there is somebody that Haley's communicating with, Aunt Augusta Taylor, who does factor in a little bit later. Is actually somebody that has helped Haley out in the past. We do find out that Haley used to have a husband that did get killed during something that happened when, I think it was in the beginning of this whole, global pandemic, civil war over food thing. And basically Manny ends up, after seeing Dawn in the lake, which, I mean, I get it, Manny, I get it. He ends up seeing that there's another compound there and there's people, and she's part of that. It's like, okay, maybe we could help people out and not just be as, selfish with our own stuff. Haley's got a reason to kind of seem selfish, but she's not really selfish because she's willing to help people out, but she doesn't want to send any of her family out. And then it turns out that actually there are some bad people in the form of cannibals that come out that are going through and slaughtering people and taking over their farmland. The thing is, we never really see anybody eating anybody. I mean, we see eating, but we don't really see eating of people. And it is what it is. I mean, there is a point where after Manny had rescued Dawn, that we get a talk between them. And that actually wasn't, that wasn't all that bad. That was actually some nice, camaraderie between those two particular actors and characters. But the thing I liked was actually in the beginning, where we see how steely-eyed this family is and how they were willing to take people down that tried to invade their land. Get through this electric fence that they have, even though it's a big perimeter. There was a nice little bit of action with some headshots and stuff like that. And even Manny had to kill a girl or a woman that he didn't want to. So that's something that haunts him a little bit later on. We see in his flashback that he saw a sick horse and everything. And then he had to hide from the people that killed his dad and killed the other people on the property. And we also find out that Haley used to be in the military of some variety. There's also this thing in this network. There are offshoots and other people that aren't necessarily maybe the nicest people. There's this this family called the Flemings that are taken out seemingly by bad people. We don't see a lot of this stuff. We hear a lot of it's more of a tell, don't show thing. But we do end up getting enough of a build and enough stuff going that eventually, when we see a flashback with Aunt Taylor helping out Haley, we find out a little bit about them. And then that builds to the third act. But what actually really kicked off, the second half of this movie was a bit before that. So we have the entire family, or we have most of the family. You have Manny, we have Galen, we have the other kids. We have Danis, who they end up confronted by some people to say they come in peace, but that ends up in a firefight. And there's this old lady that is part of the group that ends up shooting Danis a couple times. Now, because Manny acted fast, he was able to bring the kid there, or bring his sister there, and get her healed. And she was fine. But it did lead to one funny scene a little bit later on after she's been resting, after it's pretty obvious that whoever these cannibal guys are coming for the farmland, that, well, you got to fight. Yeah, honey, I know you got gut shot 2 or 3 times, but you got to get up and do something. I think you could do at least a little bit of lifting around here. And then we also get another daughter, I believe it's Rain, if I remember right. I think it's Rain. She's actually trying to take down a bunch of people on her own with a sniper-type rifle. Now, she's able to do some of that stuff, But she's not able to take them all down. And then she's got her little sister and her stepdad, and they're hiding in this basement while some of them are trying to some of them are trying to take all these, resources that they have. And meanwhile, in her efforts to go rescue her son, because she got answers from Dawn about what was going on, and Dawn gave Manny a line of bullshit, it turns out that Dawn is actually the niece of Aunt Taylor. And she's been captured. And the only way that she could free her family is to lead them away from the Freeman farm so these people could take over, take all this stuff that really doesn't belong to them. And that's it. Dawn feels bad for lying, but that doesn't end up really leading to anything big. And Daniel Deadweiler gets captured. Now, she watches, Augusta gets killed right in front of her. Her Aunt Taylor get killed right in front of her. And then she fights back and is beating up some guys and everything, and actually does not a Fujiwara armbar, but like a triangle choke thing, and gets that, and then ends up killing one guy that seemingly was like a long-haired nerd type that was trying to lead her to a new life, or like, oh, we won't hurt you, even though they said they were going to. Like, cut off part of her, he said before this, because the boys are going to get hungry. Because they've turned to cannibalism instead of whatever. I mean, I don't know. That's a little bit messy right there. I mean, I guess when you're desperate, you'll turn to any source of food. But Manny ends up rescuing his mother. And then this is after Manny had, like, tried giving some speeches and tried giving some stuff and stuff like that. And there was that mother-son dynamic and butting of heads because they're so much alike that he's like, well, we need to bring them with us, and tries to give a speech. And she's like, you're always trying to give a speech. Just bring them with us, like realizing, hey, let's stop being selfish. And then the stepdad basically says, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to kill the lights. He gets in and does a whole bunch of gun stuff. This is despite the fact, by the way, a little bit earlier, he had spikes put through his hands like they were going to frickin' put him on a cross, but he's okay enough to shoot people. And he does that, and it's actually a pretty cool scene because we just see the flashes of the gunfire and stuff like that. But he unfortunately does get hit because he's not inhuman. And that ends up leading to some problems because now he's bleeding out and stuff like that. And there are two people that are going to set fire to the house. Well, this is their only thing. He says, look, the way that we're going to do this, you got to let them in. You got to let them into this place, and we're going to do something. So they use Danis as bait while she's getting, because she's been shot and stuff like that. And this one guy and this one older guy, or older woman, they're looking for, like, supplies. She finds the guns, but then ends up getting blown away by the stepdad. And then we have the other guy that, it's actually kind of a funny moment that you have Rain, who had gotten this gun from her stepdad, but it jammed. Or she had to say dinner or something like that. But she's like, eat this motherfucker, and then it click. And she's like, seriously? And then she ends up shooting the guy. So it's kind of a funny moment. And that basically leads to now a nighttime scene where Daniel Deadweiler's trying to fight back, but she says, I'll draw their fire, son. You take them to the house and stuff like that. She ends up getting shot at one point, gets in a fight in a barn with three guys. Ends up getting stabbed through the back at one point, almost through the I'm like, okay, I don't know how she's surviving that. But Manny ends up killing another guy. So we get some good splatter violence in the beginning and at this point. And Manny ends up saving her, and now they have all these new people from this colony that Dawn was part of. And now that the aunt's dead, I guess Dawn's the de facto leader of that. But now they're all living on this farm, and now they have more farmhands and stuff like that. No, Daniel Deadweiler's alive. There were other parts, like as far as family drama, that I might have glossed over and everything, and there were a few flashbacks, I guess, that were sort of neat, like she met her son after, like, doing some kind of deployment. But overall, it relied on the strength of Deadweiler's performance and had some good moments. The opening, the closing, that kind of stuff. I just think there are a few more things that could have explained, and I don't want, like, 40 Acres Day 1. I don't want that. I think there were a few more things that could have been explained. But overall, pretty good movie. I'll give it a B. Gave it 3.5 on Letterboxd. You can check out that review if you want, and check out my other Letterboxd reviews. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Redland. Until we meet again, happy trails to you.